Hello folks, Paul here once again with another video for you, and this one is the first part of Hookah 101. We are now going to go over the different parts that go into building your hookah, and I figured what better hookah to use than one like the Mya Colossus, which can be broken down into all of its constituent parts. But funny enough, we're not starting with a part of the hookah. We're starting at the very top. This is a wind cover. It is a generic wind cover, but it goes over your bowl, it concentrates heat, and it keeps interference from outside, like obviously wind and stray pets and bags and articles of clothing from coming in to direct contact with the coals. It helps to prevent spills, it helps you with your heat management, and I think that this is one of the accessories that should be a part of every hookah, but sadly it doesn't come with every hookah. But yeah, pick up a wind cover if you don't have one. Next, inside here, we have all of the pieces that make up a hookah. The first one is the bowl. This is what goes under your wind cover and on top of your stem. This is where you place all of your tobacco. It is what the coals go on top of, it's what the foil goes on top of, and it's what really allows you to actually smoke your hookah. Most bowls are made out of clay or ceramic. This is a porcelain bowl. This is the nice, pretty blue, kind of a cobalt color that came with my Mya Colossus. But there's also things like the Tangier's small funnel that you see here. This is an older small, so it is quite large. What else have I got? I've got some classic small Egyptian red clay bowls. Bowls can be made out of a wide variety of materials. Clay is the most common, but you can also find glass, you can also find metal, and they all have different properties. The main goal of any bowl is to contain the tobacco, contain a fair amount of the juice, and redistribute the heat from the coals all the way down to the bottom of the bowl through the material, so that you're not just cooking the top layer, you're cooking all of the tobacco straight to the bottom. Some materials do that better than others, some designs do that better than others, but it's kind of a personal experiment that you have to try to figure out what bowl works best for you and what bowl works best for each tobacco that you smoke. Next, we have what goes between the bowl and the stem. This is a bowl grommet. It is a fairly large grommet made out of usually high heat rubber like this one, or silicone is actually the one that I most often use in bowls like this because it creates a perfect seal and is really, really heat resistant. But this goes into the bowl, and the stem goes into the bottom of the grommet there. It blocks out all of the air that could get into here and ruin your system and thin out your smoke, and make sure that the only air that's coming through the top of the stem is going through your bowl first. It's a pretty simple idea, but without that, well, you're kind of stuck. There are some techniques you can use, like the wet paper towel trick, but you need to go check out our videos and articles on exactly that topic to figure out what I'm talking about. Next, below the bowl grommet is the tray. The tray, not every hookah comes with a tray, but I like them on every hookah that I have because they help to prevent spilled coals. If coal gets knocked off of the bowl for some reason, it has a much better chance of landing in the tray rather than on the carpet if you have your tray attached. So don't forget this one. It's also a good place when your coals are getting very ashy to take them off and drop the coal, let it hit the bottom, and it should knock off all the ash. Take your coal, flip it over, put it back on the bowl, but that's some heat management stuff. I don't need to get into that. But yeah, this is the ashtray. It serves a lot of different purposes and looks cool at the top of your hookah. Now, next we have the actual stem. How very official. This is the top section of the Mya Colossus. You can see that this section right here is the actual, I guess you could call it, post upon which the bowl is going to sit with the grommet. just like that. See, that's a great seal right there. Now, a stem can come in an infinite number of designs, but they all have a few things in common. Number one is that there's some place to put the bowl, and number two is that there is a pipe that runs from one end to the other that allows air to go straight from the bowl down to the downstem and into the vase. The lower part of the stem, which is actually over here, in most hookahs this is all one piece, but like I said, the Colossus can be broken apart. You get the heart. This is the heart of your hookah, right here, where the hose ports and the purge valve sit. Now, the hose port is where your hose actually connects with your hookah. Some of these are removable. Some of them have ball bearings on the inside that act as an auto seal, but they all are pretty much the same in one general way, which is they are a place for the hose to connect to your hookah. And it's going to be pretty much impossible to see with the open heart, the open chamber style of this heart, but the hose port sits just to the side of the main stem. So what you have is the main tube of the stem that runs down, turns into the downstem, and goes into the vase. The hose port opens up at the top. It doesn't run down to the water at all. It sits well above the water line, so that when you're drawing from the hose, the air pressure sucks the smoke down the main pipe, pulls it through the water, and then out through the hose port. The purge valve is a one-way valve that it's usually made of this is actually a self-contained one. But inside of here, there is a ball bearing that sits upon a seal, and when you blow into the hookah, when you blow into the hose port, air gets forced into here. The water acts as a seal, not allowing smoke to go up the pipe, and all of the smoke gets purged out of this little ball bearing valve right here. Not every hookah is going to have one of these purge valves. Traditional Turkish hookahs do not, but it's a fairly useful thing. It's a fairly useful feature. Now, next we have the vase. Many people, spend a lot of time and money finding pretty vases, but really all it is it's a bottle that holds your water, that acts as your filter and coolant for your hookah. The stem, and I do not have the downstem attached right now because that would be a little unwieldy with the camera, goes into here and sits in the base. The downstem reaches down to the water line, and that's where the smoke comes down, hits the water, bubbles through, and gets filtered. Basically, so long as your base holds water and keeps your hookah stable, it does the job. It doesn't have to be a fancy material. It doesn't have to be pretty cut glass like what comes with the Colossus, and it doesn't have to be something like a Bohemian. It just has to do the job, and that's what a vase is. It's a vase. Just to give you guys the full rundown, this is the downstem that on something like the Mya Colossus actually does come apart, but on most of your Egyptian hookahs, it will be one solid piece with the rest of your stem. Now, something that I don't have on hand right now because mine are all being used is the base grommet. The base grommet goes between the stem and the base, and it kind of does the same job as the bowl grommet. It seals out air, it keeps things tight, but do not rely on the bowl grommet to keep the stem and the base connected. You don't want to grab your hookah by the stem and lift. You want to always lift from the base. If you grab from the stem, you're running the risk of the seal slipping, and then the base comes off and glass shatters, and you have bloody feet and a ruined session and a broken hookah that doesn't work without a base, and it's just not good. Always carry from the base, never from the stem. Similar to the base grommet is the hose grommet, which you guys can see right here. It is, again, a silicone or high, well, it doesn't have to be high heat, but often a silicone or rubber seal that goes in here and connects the hose port to the hose. Which brings us to our last piece. This is a hose. This is the Ager hose or the Ager hose. I'm not sure how people want to pronounce that thing. There are tons of different hoses out there, but they all have some main, I guess, attributes that they share. Number one is an end. Usually it's hard plastic or wood or something along those lines that goes into the hose port and lines up with that seal, creates a good seal, and allows you to pull air without interruption through the hose. The next part is the flexible hose section that is actually kind of a more modern innovation. Original hookahs actually had a rigid stem that came out of the heart here, from which you drew your air and your smoke. But that meant that you had to move the hookah every time you wanted to hand it to someone else, and also tilt the hookah, which was very precarious if you wanted to smoke without leaning down and like putting your head and neck at an awkward angle. So the flexible hose made sharing your hookah and, frankly, just smoking your hookah a lot easier and a lot more comfortable. Now, at the other end, you have the handle and mouthpiece. With a hose like this, they are one and the same. That is a pretty common design for a lot of traditional hookah hoses, but in some of the more modern washable hoses, what you get is a long rigid handle and then a mouthpiece that looks like this. They all do the same job. It's mostly just an aesthetic thing. The inner gauge of the hose, many people have preferences regarding your ease of draw. The wider the hose, the easier it is to draw. The narrower the hose, the more restricted, but many people believe the more concentrated the flavor. There are lots of debates about that, and I'm not going to throw my hat into that one on this video, but that's the basic components of a hose. And that's about it. Those are the main components of a hookah. It can seem kind of intimidating and can seem a little daunting at first, but if you get a good quality basic hookah, most of it is all one solid piece that is welded together. You don't have to worry about much more than making sure that your seals are in place, your water is at the right level, and your downstem is connecting with the water level. So yeah, that's it. If you have any questions, please leave them below. I'll try to answer them. We're going to be going over even more in the next part of this video, where we actually start setting up the hookah and start packing a basic bowl. So see you guys next time, and happy smoking.